Welcome to part 3 of the Birchworld campaign for Stellaris. Previously, we started a federation to save the galaxy, and we built a whole bunch of megastructures to offset the fact we don't have any planets, and that's working pretty nicely. We also had a brief war with our neighbours in order to make them accept our peaceful ways through force, that whole thing. We defeated them and then absorbed them into our Saving the Galaxy Federation. We're now in the second half of the game pretty much, and we're focusing on backfilling all of the available territories that have been effectively claimed by me by quickly conquering outwards and claiming long strings of territories. We're also still exploring the place outside of the galaxy, which is what that pop-up there is about, and somebody is claiming my territories for themselves. So that's an indication that something bad is going to happen when one of your neighbours starts claiming that you have their territory. In this case, it's the faction to our east that's doing that. So with that in mind, we can send ships to go and be on the vague borders in that area, just in case something happens, and that does prove to be a pretty good decision soon enough. I'm also building this Gigaforge, which was a trick. I thought this was the Hyperforge that I remembered from a previous campaign. No, it's an inferior version, but basically the gist behind that and all of the construction we're doing is that we're just slapping down resource and science creation megastructures here and there to get us tons of science and resources, and we're doing absolutely fine economically, which is the thing I thought would be a challenge in this campaign. And here is a war declaration. It actually wasn't the guys to our east attacking us, it's our Federation partners who have apparently decided to declare war on them preemptively. It seems I wasn't consulted on this, but oh well. We're going in. I already had my ships at that border, so we can just pile into their territory. There was nothing to stop us, so we immediately start claiming a bunch of systems. Looks like I'm simultaneously having some trouble from these blobs which are attacking me. Well, we can send something to take them out. And yes, we're still expanding this pocket down here. It's still a disconnected pocket, but it's nice to have these extra systems. They're all great systems with a bunch of exotic resources. So might as well just build all the research stations and stuff to get those resources. Now the enemy take me by surprise, because while I met no resistance invading their territory at the north end of it, at the south end of it they also have a way into our territory, and they use it to invade me, with a fleet that's pretty much as powerful as my fleet as well. In this case we do have a high-level space station blocking their way. So I hoped maybe the space station would stop the enemy, but unfortunately that's not going to be enough to resist a fleet of that strength. I have a few ships nearby, but not enough to stop them. They're going to race backwards and I'll rapidly start building more ships. But you can't really rapidly build ships in this game, it does take a while. So my main response to this after our defeat there is to grab my main fleet where most of my ships are concentrated and have them race all the way through the enemy's territory to then kind of re-invade our own territory from the enemy's side and come up behind the front line of the war. That's the plan anyway. And because the enemy ships are actually two different fleets, my fleet is better than both of them individually, so all we have to do is fight them separately, and then their strength won't be too much of a problem. In a miraculous twist, our allies actually sent some ships down here and started fighting. They didn't send enough, but I was surprised they did anything. I expected them to be completely hands-off. That's my experience with your allies in Stellaris. They'll just get you into wars and then wait for you to do something about it. Very nice of them. But yeah, they lose some ships. Perhaps that helps out by delaying the enemy. But the plan is happening. Our ships here are now sneaking up on our own territory after a bunch of it got occupied. Annoyingly, because the enemy took that high-level space station, I now have to fight it to get into my own territory. Inconvenient, but if they can do it, we can do it. Our fleet's certainly a bit more powerful than what they used to do it. So we do get in, we quickly start deoccupying a bunch of the territories in this area, then we hunt down the enemy fleets. And as I mentioned, we fight them both separately, so here's just one of the two battles. They're trying to escape, but our ships are super fast. We stop them using the hyperlane, force an engagement, and then absolutely annihilate them by just being more than twice as powerful as them. And because it does take a while for ships to be built in this game, that's pretty much won the war for us right there. We're going to have plenty of time to take all of the stuff we have left to go and just take out all the enemy shipyards, which will guarantee victory eventually once we do the busy work of occupying all of their systems and planets, that whole annoying part. They did have a nice surprise for us when we reached their home system. I get this message saying we've discovered a flat Earth of some kind, or a flat planet I should say. So the flat planeters were right in the end. There's at least one out there in this galaxy anyway, and it's right here. Interestingly, it's not even facing its star, so lots of physics issues for this. But yeah, they've somehow made it and become a big galactic empire off that limited space with a limited amount of sunlight as well. However, that does not prevent them from losing their home system to this secondary fleet I made to come over here and help us speed up the occupation process. So yes, that's going to be the end of this faction. As they're about to die, we complete the sentry array there, which will allow us to spy on everybody's ships henceforth, which will be handy for planning any wars. They're currently at like -1 acceptance on a peace deal, so we just need to do something to them to tip them over the edge. Here's something: my backup fleet finds one enemy corvette hanging on the edge of a system and blows it up. That will help a bit. And at some point in the near future, the peace does actually happen, and it's another peace where we have spread our peaceful ways through Force, because after their ideology change, which I think was the goal of that war, they then agree to join our Federation, and everyone else thinks that's fine too. So our Let's Save the Galaxy club has expanded, and we're now allied to someone on our own border. That makes our position even more secure. I need to get those tentacly guys on board ideally to complete our nice big flank of allies. But overall, our Federation is growing and becoming powerful enough that nobody can do anything against us, so we're pretty much secure against anything except an endgame crisis potentially. We'll have to see. Here's a little look at the Birch world. Still going strong, with many different species now living there. We've got maxed out immigration, so we're growing as fast as we can. But because the game doesn't have exponential population growth, as in like the new people don't breed with each other, it means we're still very limited in the amount of population we can actually get, and I'm pretty sure we're really far behind everyone else. Doesn't matter that much because the economy is fine, and we need to waste our resources doing stuff. That's why I'm looking here at the menu for megastructures. I think I eventually started building a Dyson sphere to get basically infinite money, and a Matryoshka brain somewhere as well to get science. Here was an interesting discovery that happened shortly after this. One of the unspacefaring civilizations, the primitive races, has actually built an attack moon. Despite me banning them at the start of the game in the mod settings, it seems that the non-player type factions can still build them, so that's inconvenient. It's not a particularly powerful attack moon, but it means this non-spacefaring race is now unusually strong. They're in my territory, of course, so we need to take care of them. I think what I did is use the indoctrination thing to force them to become our ideology, so they become xenophilic pacifists, meaning they're unlikely to use that mega weapon, so I think that's all fine. We came quite close to getting another member of the Save the Galaxy club. The guys to our southwest can almost enter the Federation. Most of the people in it want them to join, but somebody doesn't, and this is the issue. Once there's lots of people in this Federation, lots of things require unanimous votes to pass, and somebody can keep everybody else out. Inconvenient for us, because we just want everybody to be friends so that you can all die for us later. I did though realise we can get the tentacly guys in on board, because they're so much weaker than us now that they're almost willing to surrender to us and be our protectorate state. We can push them over the edge with a bit of bribery. We can buy favours off them, only 10 unfortunately, but that's enough favours for them to think it's nice to return the favour of me giving them a bunch of stuff by surrendering to us. So there we go, we gain this faction as a protectorate, and I believe that now they're our protectorate, they're automatically brought into the Federation that we're a part of. So in this fashion, we have forced them to join the Alliance, and I think they give us something because they're our protectorate. It's different to being a tributary, which gives you resources. Maybe they give us influence or something. That's that, but it works so well, I was like, oh, who else can I buy into the Alliance? And it turns out their neighbours, another smaller faction, was eventually able to be convinced to join by throwing favours at them as well. So there we go, we've expanded our Federation even more. At this stage we are the political hegemons of the galaxy, and really nobody can challenge us very much anyway. We did receive this transmission from a mysterious alien race. Turns out it wasn't a Crisis faction appearing, it's part of the Event Horizon Offset Facility thing that is added by the Gigastructural Engineering mod. Basically it spawns this little extra faction, and what they do is they sell you extra star systems. So you can use resources that you gain in the out-of-galaxy star systems, a unique quasi-mass something resource which only is found there, to buy star systems. They're very expensive and we don't really need them, but I think I did buy a few. The perhaps more interesting thing they sold was the ability to research this tech about the primordial stones, which I mentioned before stopped you building gateways out in the extragalactic area, and now we can, is the long and short of that. You can turn the primordial stones into primordial pylons, I think they were called, which are effectively just gateways. So this blob is now actually connected into our territory, and it's also being expanded as we buy more random systems that spawn out here. But just doing that to waste resources and time really, we don't need to do that. Researching at random, getting traditions at random, we're just waiting for something to happen. And you know the Federation has stuff it wants to happen. Somebody else in the Federation wants to invade the Sustainability Initiative to impose our ideology on them. Also, to conclude the Gigaforge drama from earlier, I've now started building the Hyperforge. That's more like it, that will satisfy my desire for alloys. Anyway, we're now at war with the other Federation in the galaxy. There was another Federation, the Mutual Assistance Pact or something, which has 3 factions in it, including the Sustainability Initiative. So this is the most powerful other bloc that exists, meaning this is the theoretical hardest war we can fight, but we're still much more powerful than them. That said though, a lot of our power is in the fact that we have lots of allies, and they're not really going to do anything obviously. So it is going to be a bit more of a contest when it's just us versus all 3 of these factions. Some of the fleets they had out there were super weak, like this SI fleet that dies right away, but other ones were similar in strength to us. They almost certainly had as many ships as us, but they were split into way more fleets overall. So what I was doing is my usual strat of just concentrating everything into one big death blob to go around killing them individually. Now this is going to help us out. I built this megastructure, the assembly yard, which massively increases your naval capacity. So you might notice at the top of the screen we've got loads of spare naval capacity now, and that just means we're allowed to build more ships. We still have to get the resources, and once we have them we have to pay upkeep on them, so we need to have big alloy and energy incomes to support big fleets. But now it's just an option for us, and we'll gradually build our way towards that if we can. That won't help out so much in this war, but that's more of a long-term thing. And now we'll see the upsides and downsides of the death blob strategy. So here's the upside. When our unbeatable fleet with most of our stuff in it hits enemy fleets, they just die instantly, so a relatively powerful enemy fleet just goes down in seconds right there. The downside though is that because we're fighting over such a big area and our fleet is only in one place at once, what I found was the enemy constantly reoccupied places I took from them in the past, and I had to go back on myself the whole time, and this caused various issues as well. In cases like where I'm bringing in some ground forces to land on planets, but then the area around the planet gets recaptured by small, low-strength enemy fleets that are powerful enough to just take back systems. So we can't really do anything about this without splitting our fleet up, but I didn't want to, that's the reason why we didn't do this, so I'm just going to very slowly try to retake the territory that we're constantly losing to the enemy. It's going backwards and forwards basically, and that's going to cause this war to actually last quite a long time. And you can see here an example of my ground forces being in awkward positions. We've got ground forces very near an enemy active fleet that could just kill them, and I think I did lose at least 1 stack of ground armies to getting caught somewhere or other in this war. Pretty nasty. My initial solution to not having enough coverage was to just spam out more ships rather than to split up my gigantic fleet and have smaller fleets going around. Here was a case where one smaller fleet does very well, tactically speaking. It comes into a system where there was enough enemy stuff to hold us off, but it was spread out between the hyperlane exit and the station in the middle, and so by taking out each group on the way into the middle of the system, we actually annihilated them and barely lost anything in what would have been a balanced fight. Very handy. Anyway, so that's one thing we can do to cover up our very leaky territory where the enemy keeps taking it back instantly, although we do have to be careful because small groups like this actually can be defeated by the enemy's relatively okay fleets. I was kind of just hoping they would eventually run into my gigantic fleet that can totally kill them, but because we're constantly going backwards and forwards trying to retake shipyards and the like, it was a bit difficult. It was another rare example of our allies getting in on the war, but they get defeated in their engagement, unfortunately. For some reason our allies seem to suck. Our enemies have decent fleets and tech level, but our allies don't. Maybe they're just relying on me too much at this stage, I don't know. Here's an example of one of our small fleets actually getting into trouble. It's the humans, of all people, trying to take back the Sol system. The sustainability initiative appeared from somewhere with a fleet that was unusually powerful for them, and they were able to beat us between our fleet and the space station. Our initial numbers looked okay, but it totally didn't do the job. So now someone has to go back there and kill them later. It's all possible, and I eventually did actually split up the main fleet into two 60-something thousand strong fleets, still easily enough to defeat anything the enemy throw at us, even if they started uniting their fleets together, which I don't think the AI tries to do. And with these guys, we can kill the enemy twice as fast effectively by having twice as many battles go on. This war, although kind of won at this stage, is going to be going on forever effectively, because you can see the enemy have minus 1,000 opinion of surrendering, and that's because some of our allies are claiming tons of their territory and planets, and it doesn't tell you where those planets are, so you have to go through this absolute nightmare of trying to find them in the systems, getting your armies to go and land there and take them over. In theory you could leave your allies to do this for you, but in practice they don't really do it. What I've noticed happens is they tend to bombard a planet before they invade it, and that takes an extremely long time, so it just delays things. It is a little bit faster, or a lot faster, to actually go and do it yourself just with overpowering ground armies that can take any planet, which you can pretty easily get by just spamming recruitment, especially because we have xenomorphs. Anyway, we're cutting like 10 or more years into the future now, when after a long period of war where not much happens, we eventually convince the enemy to surrender by taking all of their planets. Looks like some territory has gone to our allies. This Covenant faction there actually isn't in the Federation. I haven't mentioned them so far. I think they're a vassal of someone else who is in the Federation, so they're effectively in it. I've just never spoken to them. What I wanted to happen as a result of this war is, of course, for the Sustainability Initiative to join the Federation, but someone doesn't want them to, so it's that classic issue. And what you can't do is use favors to force other factions to let other factions into the federations, which is what I was trying to do basically to get around this. Inconvenient. The Federation itself is actually looking pretty good. We're approaching max level. If we can get there, you get some bonus, which is like plus 25% damage against crisis factions. So that's absolutely perfect for our Let's Save the Galaxy Federation. We'll be better at doing it, even though I don't have much faith in my allies to actually survive when the time comes. Anyway, there was after this another war that came up. I was very hesitant to join this war. It's against the guys over in the West, the isolationist xenophobes. The main reason I didn't want to do it is not because they're strong or anything, it's because after all the micro of winning that other war that I just cut out, I really didn't want to do it again. It's exactly the sort of thing I did this campaign challenge run to avoid, but instead of micro with managing the economies of all your planets, I'm managing occupying systems and trying to get war scores up, which is just as trivial and ultimately something that could be automated. In this case though, the war goes much faster, because these guys had like no ships. We just completely flattened them as we raced into their territory, and not many claims are being made. It's just an ideological war, so we don't have to do that much occupation to force them to surrender. During the war, I did something potentially very important. I grabbed this Defenders of the Galaxy Ascension perk, which gives us a massive damage boost to all kinds of different Crisis factions. So that will help us specifically save the galaxy on top of our Federation's bonuses, and I imagine it is going to be us specifically doing the work when the time comes. Now cutting to the end of that war, basically nothing happened. We ended up becoming friends with them, but they're not in the Federation. However, some form of a happy ending came along because by the end of it all, whoever wanted to block the SI getting into the Federation had changed their mind. So there you go, now the humans will be part of the Saving the Galaxy Club, meaning they might get saved by me effectively. Maybe the humans will survive, we'll see how they do. And I guess that's the closing message of this part. We will have to see how both they and everyone does, because we are approaching the end of the campaign, meaning if some Crisis stuff's gonna happen, it'll probably happen very soon. I actually haven't played more than a couple of years after this, so I don't know what's gonna happen at the time of speaking. I'm worried it's actually going to be pretty easy because our fleet capacity has gotten so large by building those assembly yards that we could just really spam a bunch of conventional ships and get away with taking down the Crisis factions without using any of the mega weapons the mod usually provides to help. Well, we will have to see, as I said, because I don't know. Possibly an anticlimax, or possibly an exciting battle for the fate of the universe coming in the next part.